see. I believe we're going to go ahead and get started this evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Huckabee. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Clover School District, and I would like to personally welcome each and every one of you here to our inaugural session of Parents, It's a Wrap. And contrary to what comes into your mind when you hear the term rap, we will not be breaking into song tonight or busting a rhyme. However, we will be spending some time raising the awareness of parents, which is what our acronym RAP stands for. This idea to offer parent workshops around a series of topics that are important to the physical, emotional, and social safety of our students came out of a committee that I serve on called No Wrong Door. And it's an affiliate group that works with Keystone Prevention, a drug and alcohol prevention center that's in Rock Hill, if you've ever heard of that program. All 4 York County school districts are members of this committee, and our goal tonight was to offer topics to you tonight and throughout the school year, to offer topics to you that would really be interesting and pertinent to the students that you're raising. Tonight's topic is on bullying and internet safety. And we chose this because of the national recognition that is going on about the topic of bullying and really to join that campaign for anti-bullying. You're going to notice and hear lots of things going on in our school district all year long about this topic. Currently, in the first month of school at our elementary schools, we've had lots of classroom guidance lessons. I was just at Kynard the other day and I saw Mr. Gover, who's here tonight, reading about bullying, and that's one of the things that we do in the elementary schools. Our middle schools, some of them the students have actually read books over the summer, and they're doing some book studies about the topic. And next week, 2 weeks from now, September the 29th, we'll have Rachel's Challenge right here back in this auditorium at 7 o'clock, and we hope to see you back out again for that. Our presenters tonight are developers of Be Print for Living, which is founded in 2009 with the business partners George Halleck and Andre Cox. The company offers service providers like schools and businesses a standardized and comprehensive scientific approach to helping others help themselves. They base their work on the latest scientific evidence on human behavior, the learning brain, change management, and leadership. Glenn Smith, our first presenter, he's here to my left, is a gifted counselor, life coach, and strategist. In his early years, he directed the first community-based group home for youth in West Virginia. He did his graduate work at Cornell University and studied with the Institute for Reality Therapy. He later became a faculty member at Cornell, and he has used his theoretical basis of reality therapy to develop programs that promote responsible decision-making. His co-presenter, Shelley Roy, who's to my right, your left, is a recognized leader in human resource development. She has consulted locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally on leadership, human behavior, change and transition, effective communication, and numerous other topics. She has also worked extensively with inmates in Mecklenburg County, which gives her lots of credibility, I think. You have, I hope, your program for tonight. They're going to be referring to those programs, and you also have a feedback sheet. We hope at the end of tonight's presentation you'll take the time to fill out those feedback sheets so that we can know how to tailor these workshops to your needs. We have 2 or 3 more of these planned later this year, and you can put those forms on the table. Would you please now give me a warm Clover welcome to our presenters, and thank you for being here.
All right, we're going to see if this works. Can you hear me all right back there? I'd much rather not use the microphone if I don't have to, but it's carrying back there all right? All right, well, it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm a resident of York County, and to be able to present my own area is always a pleasure. But please, no jeers. Both of my kids graduated from Fort Mill High School. But I have a son who's a junior at Furman this year and a daughter who's a sophomore at Presbyterian. So we're real fortunate. And boy, did they have some of the challenges all kids have. But boy, just having the opportunity to watch them grow and move through this district. And my daughter played a lot of volleyball, basketball games down here.
right where Clover High School was, in the middle school. That's a little bit about me. She said everything else, so I just want to let you know that I'm local, and my associate, I'll let her introduce herself.
And I could say about 5 words, and you know I'm not from here. Yeah, sure, you betcha. You want to go? Glenn also works with inmates. Actually, this last week he started his 100th class with inmates at the Mecklenburg County Jail. So it's something that both of us do on a daily basis. We were both in jail, and as Glenn says, they let us out. Let us stay. I'm from Minnesota, and if I talk fast, you'll know why. That's pretty typical of my speech. I am excited to be here. I came to this area for a 6-month contract, which was 2 years ago. So I've been hanging around, but I just had to tell you this. I cannot give up my lake house in Wisconsin. It's just too hot here in the summer. And when I have the chance to go home in the summer and be at the lake, I choose to do that. One thing that we didn't share is that my background is in education. I was an elementary school teacher, middle school teacher, high school teacher, and taught at the university level. So I spent a lot of time with kids. I also have 2 children. My sons are 22 and 27. I have to think twice. He keeps reminding me I don't remember how old he is. And today, my oldest one is moving out of my house. So my kids wouldn't move, so I moved. I said, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm going to South Carolina. You all can stay in the house, but I'm leaving. You got to pay my rent out there. So now that he's moving out, I got to figure something else out. So that's just a little bit about me. You want to start with?
Well, yeah. Well, now that you're all settled in, I'm going to unsettle you. I really want you to get a chance to talk to someone else here while you're here, and it's not real conducive, but I want everybody to stand up. Just kids and parents, stand up. And now, once you're up, I want you to go find somebody in the aisles or in that back row that you didn't come with to talk to. I want you to find somebody. Go do it. And then I'll tell you what I want you to do.
Testing.
Do we have anybody that's loose out there? Everybody got a partner? Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't have to talk as loud when I have this. All right. After you've introduced yourself, this would be the first thing I'd like you to talk about. I'd like you to talk about a question that you would hope that would be answered today. And of course, we're not going to be able to answer all the questions, but what question would you have liked to have answered? Like, why did you come here today? And then if we haven't answered it by the end of the presentation, we're going to have some time, and we'll stick around as long as it takes. But I want you thinking about something you would like to leave here with. Just share that with the person you're with. What got you in the door? What are you hoping one thing would be answered today? Go ahead. Well, hang on. Oh. It's the bottom one that's forward. That's really weird.
Okay, so that's okay, right there.
Let me try something here. Yeah, it's the bottom one that's forward. Boy, that's backwards in my head.
Well, turn that thing upside down.
Oh, there you go. Well, now that I got it, I'm okay. I'm okay.
All right.
Now that it's in my... What's that? That's good. Okay. Now I got one more thing I'd like you to talk about. I'd like you to go back. And of course, kids don't have to go back too far. But I'd like you to think about maybe being in school, and have you ever been or experienced bullying from any angle? Now, I'm going to give you four different angles to think from. One would be, have you ever been bullied? Personally, even as big and as I am, I wasn't a real tough kid. And I grew up in South Philadelphia, and it was a pretty tough area. And I can tell you that I've gotten permission to use their names because I'm friends with them now, but Jojo Gambino and Rocky Romano both busted my nose. Those are real names. I didn't know they were like different names till I moved from the area, but I was like, wow. So I've been bullied. These kids not only fought me, but they were the type of kids that would just walk by my locker and push my head into it. And they just egged me on all the time. Another angle would be, have you ever been a bystander? And I'm not going to say I'm ashamed, but I'm disappointed back that I did stand to the side and allow some people that I knew and hung with make fun of some people, and I never confronted them, and never. This now would be more in high school. My nose was broken more in I think it was middle school. But I wasn't really the one that perpetrated it. I wasn't the one that was really but I would sit back and probably off to the side when we left, I would laugh about it with them some. And I remember thinking back to that now, and I'm just like, I wish I had been stronger. So that's a second scenario you might have been involved with. You might have been that person. I'm proud to say that later on in my life, I did stand up for some people and saw some people being picked on or pushed around, and I stepped in. And I remember those days. That was more around my junior and senior year. And I've also been on the, this is a whole nother thought about it, but I've been married 25 years, and I remember my wife telling me, who's 100 pounds lighter than I am, and about a foot shorter, saying to me, "Don't use that tone with me." And I remember thinking, what is she talking about? But when I look back, I did use a tone with her, and that is also bullying. I think back to these days that I was trying to use, well, I mean, it wasn't that intentional, but I was just, I guess to her, it doesn't matter what I was trying to do. To her, she was feeling threatened when I would use a tone or stand above her and bark out some words. So I'd just like you to just take a minute. And that aspect, I've experienced it from all four angles. Have you been bullied? Have you ever been the bully? Have you ever been a bystander that didn't do anything, or a bystander that stepped in? Go ahead and share that with the person you're with. Pick one you feel safe with. We just can't elaborate. We just give out information. I'm going to go. I feel it. Yeah. No, but I mean, then we have like, Okay, when you just get a chance, go ahead and wrap it up, and I'm going to let you come back and sit down. First of all, I am impressed with the turnout today. I'm also impressed with what I've learned the school district is doing here already to start looking at this problem. I think one of the problems with bullying in the past has been that, well, kids would just be kids, and a lot of it was overlooked. And I think the first step in this process is to raise awareness. And that's what I see happening today, is that we're starting to come together as a community to say this is who we want to be. We want to be a community that hopefully will not exert this type of behavior to one another, that maybe we start to learn to tolerate, or maybe we even start to learn to accept it, and maybe someday even learn to accept, to honor our differences and how we get along with our opinions and how we get along with one another. Just a quick definition as what we see as bullying. I don't know if you've talked so far about something called RIP. RIP kind of is a nice acronym that moves into what we believe is bullying. One is it's repeated behavior. It's something that happens again and again and again. It's not a one-time incident. So if you have children that get in one sort of type, maybe an altercation, that's not necessarily bullying. But if you have something, a child that again and again seems to be getting into this type of situation, or you might be on the other end, you're receiving it again and again, then it's repeated. The second thing is it's intentional. It's sort of thought out. When I think about standing as the bystander while my friends made fun of this one girl or some of the boys that were in my classes, they knew exactly what they were doing. Now, I'm thinking back to when my wife told me about my tone. I'm not sure at that moment how intentional that was, but it definitely was repeated. So it needed to stop. But this was something that's well thought out, and we know what we're doing. And the third goes right along with that. No, power-based. Definitely I'm trying to show that I have power over you. And I would have to say in that situation I talked to you about, 2 out of the 3, I would say I was guilty for in that situation. And it's not easy for me to say that because I would have never wanted to be looked like that. But I was trying to get my point across and I wanted to be heard. So bullying isn't only just hitting or teasing. It can also just be using intimidation through size, through tone, and again, it's repeated and it's intention. Now, this is something that we wanted to present to you just to give you a kind of a feel of what kind of goes on in a bullying situation and what sometimes doesn't help. I don't know if you noticed the title. It said, moving from the drama of bullying. We don't know if we're going to be able to stop all bullying situations. I think that's unrealistic. But we don't have to get put in a situation where what we do kind of doesn't help when it happens. And normally, there's something called the drama triangle that I want to give to you. The drama triangle is based on this concept. There's always someone to blame. There's always someone to shame. We're looking for fault. People are saying there's a lot of excuses. And there's a lot of I'm sorry. So the three positions we're talking about, there's a persecuting person, there's a victiming person, and there's a rescuing person. Now, we would say, well, which one of these positions are the worst? Well, we believe they keep the drama triangle going. As you would see in this triangle, the persecuting people and the rescuing people are on the same line and keeping the victiming person right where they are. And what we see is what happens in these situations is, if we don't get off this triangle, many times what happens, the rescuing person comes in and saves the victim, but the victim doesn't get strong. The victim doesn't have then to start building the resources they need to become, when I say stronger, be able to handle these things on an ongoing basis. Another place we tend to go sometimes is we tend to persecute the persecutor. We bully the bully. We're not saying that's always effective either. It's easy to kind of go and feel sorry for the victim and then go to the bully and then punish him or not help them figure out who they need to be in these situations. Being a fellow that's worked in the Mecklenburg County Jail for 13 years, one thing I've learned very clearly is that hurting people that hurt people isn't getting us for the big bang for the buck. I'm finding that it's not as effective as we might think, and we need to move from that. Whoops. Let's get back there. There we go. So there you have it. You got the bully, the persecutor. You got the victim, the bully. The rescuer might be someone that would come in and stop the situation, and then say, oh, over here is your bystander. He's just watching. Neither really making it worse or making it better, which doesn't strengthen the situation at all. So, this is where I would just like to just kind of get you thinking about things. A man named Gilligan, he was a professor out of Harvard. He was a criminologist. I don't know if you know what a criminologist is. I always thought it was an interesting study. Those criminologists is a person who studies criminals. And he went around the globe. And what he found out was that people that have committed violent crimes have something in common. First thing they have in common is they don't feel part of the group. They don't feel part of the larger group. Now, they might form subgroups, which we know is a gangs or cliques or that type of thing, but they don't feel part of the larger community. In fact, they feel pushed out of the larger community. So this is something we have to keep in mind as we think about kids who are bullying. Are we helping them return to the group through learning, through something that we're going to talk to you about, and through an agreement that they can come back to, that they can restitute, that they can restore, and fix their problem. A second thing is these people that have committed violent crimes, they did not have the skills to deal with frustration. Now that's one thing, that's what Shelley and I are involved in. We're involved in teaching life skills, and the big thing that we're teaching in the jail is how to manage your stress, how to manage disappointment, how to manage falling short, failure. Because a lot of men in particular, when they hit that, they feel ashamed. And then when they feel ashamed, they lash out. That's one of the things. Now women, I'll just say, historically lash within. They hurt themselves. Men tend to strike out. I'm not saying all men and all women do this, but we know through the studies, most men, when they're feeling ashamed, act out. Women act out.
So one thing you might think about as a parent, we know it says violence up here, but as a parent, I think one thing you need to think about is that it's what I would consider any unhealthy behavior. These could be indicators that there's some other unhealthy behavior. So when we're talking about girls sort of acting in, cutting would be an example. Anorexia, bulimia, eating disorders. So it doesn't have to just be physical violence to others, it could be violence to self, drugging, self-medicating, All of those to me would be examples of what we're talking about here. So as a parent, those are some of the things that I think I would start looking for. So before we go any farther, I want you just to take a minute. Somebody's close enough, I think, for pretty much everybody. If you're not close enough to somebody, then just write yourself a note. What's going on in your head right now? What are you thinking? Just take a minute and talk about that. I want to go back to that last one that's up there, shame of being ashamed. This is one thing that we typically don't think of sort of as the culture of the U.S., but when we think of a lot of other cultures, this idea of saving face, that's what this is talking about. When we don't provide people ways to save face, we start to sort of put in motion some of the things that can lead to violence and disassociating from others, okay? So this is one thing I think as a parent that I've really had to try and work hard, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, I struggle with it all the time, and that is to let go of criticizing my children. Because criticism usually leads to shaming. And I would like to, if anybody in here has never made a mistake in your life, I'd really like to talk to you before we leave. See, learning is about making mistakes. And when we allow kids to save face when they've made a mistake, we've started to help them learn how to make mistakes and grow from their mistakes and not lead to other things. There's an old joke, I think most of you know it. If dad goes to work and he's not happy, he comes home and yells at who? Mom. And mom yells at the kids, and the kids kick the dog, right? So the frustration doesn't go away. And so we have to figure out frustration's a part of life. And bullying very often comes out of that inability to deal with frustration. So we have to help manage it. The dilemma for a lot of us is that when our children are acting in a way we don't like, we become frustrated, and at that instant, we model for them how to handle frustration. Okay, this is the tough one here. At that moment, I'm teaching my child what to do when they're frustrated. See, what we say sort of doesn't have a huge impact. What we do is what we teach. And so it's, as parents, I think we got to look at what am I modeling for my children? That's, to me, the big question. What am I modeling for my kids as they go through life? Well, Gilligan luckily has some ideas on how to get beyond this. And here it is. Learn to understand why we do what we do. We can help our kids take some time to do what we believe is the number one life skill, self-evaluate. We can help children learn how to self-evaluate. We have a tendency to want to say to them, I'm so proud of you. And where we need to start flipping it is, are you proud of yourself? What is it about this that you feel was right on target? Is there anything you'd like to go back and change, right? This is how we start to do this process. Oops, I'm sorry. Glenn, how do I do that? There we go. And Glenn said the second one, be aware. We just read a study where they surveyed 500,000 people, okay? Less than 36%, so a third, could not identify how they were feeling at any given moment. Okay? So I want you to think about that. So if we take you three right here, that means one of you right now doesn't know how you feel. Okay? So teaching kids If I'm busy being focused on me, I have less time to be focused on you, right? So this is a big part of what we're working towards. We believe that what you're really heading, why are we even talking about this? You have this, it's on your handouts, it's on the very front page. Is we think that most folks aren't on one end of the spectrum or the other. We think most people, most communities are somewhere in the middle, right? And on one end, we have coercion. So anybody want to take a guess what might be something that's coercive, a behavior that's coercive? Nobody's answering me. That was coercive. You hear it? Okay? It's when what? When I want to get my way regardless of what you want. Okay? Often it has the tone. It can have the infamous pointer finger, that's another one. Anytime I start to get my upper body going, I'm probably heading in a coercive direction. The look. Give your neighbor the look. Everybody's got one? Yeah. The sigh, that's my other favorite. Okay? Now, we can make it, we also have what I call the softer side of spheres of coercion. Here it is. Oh, I worked so hard today, and I had to come home to this mess. Couldn't you at least put your dishes in the dishwasher? Sound familiar up there? Still coercion. Or here's one of my other favorites. You know what? You bake the best cakes. You make a great red velvet cake. Could you bring 20 on Sunday to the church? Right? So I want you to understand coercion can sound really good. Right? But the idea is I want to get what I want to get without taking into account what you want. Okay? And on the other end is community. And community is when we collectively decide, as a family, as a classroom, as a building, as a larger community, who we want to be together. How do we want to operate? And one of the things that I worked with today is this idea that there's two words, implicit and explicit. Implicit means it's implied, right? We don't talk about it. Unfortunately, in many families, most of what we believe is not talked about. I bet you all can think of an instance. You all grew up in a family. I can tell you one that was not talked about in my family. But if you wanted money, you go to my dad. If you wanted permission, you go to my mom. You got it? It was never talked about, but everybody knew. Right? The other thing is we had sort of an understood rule that you never left the table without saying, excuse me and thank you. Nobody ever said it. It was implied. But in a community, we start to be explicit. We talk about it. So in your handouts, you see on the next page something called family. I think it says at the top, family beliefs. Everybody see where I'm talking about? This is part of what Glenn can spend a little bit of time on. And what we're really recommending is if we want to get to community, what we got to do is form agreements and have accountability. And you'll notice one of the things on there is bullying. We believe that one of the ways that we need to operate in a family is to talk about what do we believe in our family about bullying. What do we believe about how we want to handle it? What do we believe about who we report it to? How do we want to do it? We think the same thing needs to happen in classrooms, the same thing in schools, the same thing in communities. I bet everybody here, is there anybody that grew up in this town? Was raised here? I bet there were some rules here when you grew up that everybody in the town knew. Were there? Has everybody got one from the community where they grew up? See, before they were sort of there, but nobody ever talked about it. And what we're suggesting is we need to put it start talking about it. When we're on coercion, situation do we need compliance? If the building is on fire, we need compliance. Okay? The problem is, we want kids to do the right thing when no one is looking. And when we do compliant behaviors, what do we know happens the minute no one is looking? People do what they want to do, right? Like, I could almost bet you that I'm one of those people. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's a red light, and there isn't anybody for 25 miles an hour. Am I going to choose to be compliant at that moment? Do the right thing when no one is looking, right? So this is the dilemma. On the other side, of course, we have character. So I'd like you to just turn to somebody next to you. How many of you want your kids to be children of character rather than kids that are compliant? Just take a minute and tell me.
Just quickly, just so the problems with punishment and reward is if there's a lot of punishment going on, and coercive punishment. That's different than consequences. Consequences are not punitive. They're like these 4 walls. They're just there. If you hit one, it hurts. You know, that's it. But punishment would be that, it's kind of like, well, you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. So it's that. And I'm not talking about there's not limits. But the problem with that is, if there's a lot of punishment, kids grow up, we grow up thinking, what will happen to me if I don't? And if you're reward-based, the things that come through our minds are, when we're asked to do something, is, what will happen to, instead of what will happen to me if I don't, what will I get if I do? And we create the conditions for that. Well, what will I get? Well, if I do it, what do I get? What do I get? I tell you what, man, there's nothing as a parent that I just did not want to hear from my kid. You should do it because you want to, but I would create those conditions. I would create the conditions because I started handing out. Well, if you do this, you'll get this. If you get good grades, I'll give you this. Then they went and got a job. So why do they need to get good grades? Right? The neat thing, the other thing about punishment and reward is this idea that you have a problem, I'm going to fix it. When you get to the other side, I have a problem with what's going on here, you're going to fix it. We fix problems. In the Smith household, this is true. It's still up on our refrigerator. There's a sign that says, in the Smith household, we're not interested in blame, shame, fault, regrets, or excuses. We're interested in how we're going to fix it. I don't care how all this stuff got here, how we want to get picked up. There's a big difference in me walking into the house saying, whose stuff is this? Versus, how are we going to get this cleaned up? See, well, it's not mine. I didn't ask whose it was. But it's not mine. I didn't ask that. Well, it's Carly. Okay, well, I'll go get her. All right, now we're getting somewhere. Or she'd come down and say, well, this is not mine, it's Mom. I'll get it. But anyway, when you start building that into it, you got more character. How do you get that going? Right here. One thing we are not challenging our kids, our family, our classrooms, our schools, our organizations is with this question right here, is who do we want to be? I'm not talking about who we want to be like, I want to be a fireman when I grow up, is what principles do we want to live in our house? Shelley mentioned that I have done 100 classes up at the Mecklenburg County Jail. agreement on how we were going to operate as a class. This has nothing to do with rules. That's easy. All jail rules apply. I can't change that. How are we going to operate? How are we going to treat each other in this classroom? And I've had 100 agreements, and not one has been the same. Now, there's been 2 principles that have been on every one of them. I can go back and show you 100 what I call classroom constitutions. There's 2 principles been on every one of them. Respect has been 100 times, not for me, from them. And the other one happens to be, which is nice for me to hear, is openness. But believe it or not, in the Mecklenburg County Jail, I've had men say they want to be loving, caring, humble, honest, courageous. We had one the other day say, be sucker free. Be sucker free. Yep, don't be a sucker and don't get sucked in. I said, all right, we'll put that up there. And that became their motto of the class. We are not going to get sucked into stuff we're not supposed to get sucked into. So one thing that we really work on is helping every person make a personal agreement with themselves. Who do you want to be? As a father, I've coached all my life, coached youth sports. I never even had my AAU teams do layups until they had a personal agreement with themselves and agreement with their teammates. And then I would ask them a very important question. Who do you want me to be as your coach, your father, your counselor, your mentor, your teacher, whatever? I'm thinking about all the roles I play as your boss. I have an organization, I have people who work for me. Who do you want me to be when you're not who you said you wanted to be? It's a great thing for teachers to learn in the classroom. Who do you want me to be as a teacher when you're not upholding to the standards that you've set? We're not asking kids what they want. We're not asking kids and families to stand by and say, what kind of family do we want to have? And then when they fall short, we don't have to punish, we don't have to work. Now we can hold accountable. Now we can come in and say, are we living up to our agreement? Is this when I'm supposed to step in and help you get to the next step? So these agreements, I can just tell you that the kids, we also have a program in Mecklenburg County called DASH, Developing Adolescent Strengthening Habits. Every kid who comes to our program has to come with their parent or diverts it from the courts. They leave with a personal agreement, they leave with a family agreement, and they leave with a community agreement. Who do I want to be in relationship to my community? In the schools, it's a personal agreement, a classroom agreement, and then an agreement with a larger community, which is the school. Who do I want to be in relationship? And we help these organizations come to these agreements and then help them figure out a way to come back if they fall short. How can they become strong?
I think one thing that I'd be thinking if I were, well, I am a parent, but I'd be thinking is, okay, if I want to do this, if I want to move in this direction, if I want to make sure that my son or daughter isn't take the position of being victimized, right, and feeling like they're victimized, or I don't want my kids to bully. One of the things that I know is really clear from the research, I gotta get them connected. I gotta get them connected to other kids, and I gotta get them connected to other adults. The research is really clear. When I am connected to at least one other person, I feel connected to them, I am less likely to get involved in behaviors that are not healthy. Okay? So what we want to do is get the community connected. Kids who are connected to each other don't bully each other. It's much more difficult to do it if I know who you are and I know what you stand for. We wanted to take at least, I'm going to go real fast here. I want to talk for just a minute about cyberbullying because we know it's getting to be more and more of a problem. The difference between cyberbullying and bullying face-to-face is it's done electronically. One of the places that I have the opportunity to go is to a school district not real far from here. I won't say on a fairly regular basis. And I recently asked the high school girls that are there, what's the latest form of cyberbullying? And here's what they told me. You get some guy's phone that another girl likes. You start sending her all kinds of messages so she thinks they're coming from him. Until you've got her hooked, then you ask her to send you something that's not appropriate, and then we beam it to everybody. Okay? So electronics can be a wonderful thing. They can also be a very detrimental thing. But I'm going to say one thing to all of the kids that are here today. This is the problem. With technology, what you post is permanent. It never, ever goes away. It cannot be deleted. We can take you to some of the folks we work with in the jail, and one of the reasons that they're there is because they did something through text messaging, and their records of all of their texts are stored, and now they can be pulled up. So the idea that you think you can post something and erase it and it goes away is not the reality with technology. The evidence is there. So if you post it, it's permanent. That's what I always tell people. So here's what you can do as a parent to help protect your kids. First of all, the recommendation at the national level is not to have your kids on Facebook or any other social network until they're at least 13. Never let them use real names, age, gender. And basically what you want to do is, how many of you know what a thing called an avatar is? Everybody know what an avatar is? An avatar is a character you create that is not your real picture or your real face. If your kids are on a social network, we really encourage you to have them create an avatar. I know we all want to share pictures. I see pictures all the time on Facebook, but we need to be very careful with our kids not to have regular pictures of them, their real picture on their site. So avatars are one of the critical components. And the other thing is try to avoid easy passwords. And what I mean by that is I know they're easier to remember, but you're better off if they have numbers, letters, and characters, all three in the password. The reason for this is other kids getting into other people's social networks, either onto their Facebook page, onto their phones, and other things. So have a tough password. The next thing is use security. If you are not familiar with the security on your child's phone, on the computer, on any Facebook page or anything else, get familiar. Pretty much now, any provider, any of the big ones, AOL, Yahoo, all of those have privacy settings. They also have monitoring that parents can do. Know the security features and help your kids set that part up. The other one up here is learn how to do block and don't hesitate to report. Okay? This is where an agreement comes in. You need to form an agreement that seems reasonable to you of who your children are allowed to talk to, for how long, and when, and what about. I know some of you would be shocked if you saw some of the text messages that go out during the day at your schools. You'd be very surprised if you start looking at it. The next thing is, this is communicate. You need to communicate with your kids. And kids are way more willing to share with you if you're not into the triangle and blaming and shaming them when they do come to you. At one point in my life, I had 5 boys living in my house, ages 13 to 21. I have 2 of my own. The 3 others, I have one of those sons that instead of bringing home stray animals, he brings home stray people. He's still doing it. And so I ended up with 5 boys, and here's what would happen. When they were ready to talk to me, they would say, Shelley, do you have any errands you need to run? Because what they wanted was time in the car. The car can be a wonderful place with those of you that have children to talk to your kids. You can find out a lot because you're busy driving and you're keeping your face and your thoughts at least somewhat focused there. And it somehow opens the door for kids to say some things they have a tough time saying when they're sitting down facing you face to face. Keep your hands on the wheel, but stay connected. And the other thing is, the reason it says up there about remember what's important to a teen may not be important to an adult. If you can remember what it was like to be a teenager, when somebody made fun of something you wore or something you said, it may not seem like a big deal to us as adults, but to a 12-year-old child, a 13-year-old child, it's a big deal. So don't take it lightly when your kids come to you. The next thing is be firm. We have this saying, be firm and be fair. Okay? Form agreements on how long, and remember, posting is permanent. So limit how long your kids can be on things. It's not all bad to have cell phone plans that have limited text messaging. Glenn, you want to tell about Carly for 1 minute?
6,300 a month. Gee. And this was an all-age student that could shoot three-pointers. How do you do 6,300 text messages?
Well, watch. It's one-handed. I've watched it. The other one is know the danger signs. And this is the part I do want to spend a little bit of time on, and then we're at time. If you are worried about your child being bullied or being a bully, the number one thing you want to look for is their sleep patterns. This is what the research is telling us. Children who bully and children who are bullies have a lot of anxiety. And along with all the hormones that go along with the teen years, anxiety creates very rough sleep patterns. The average teenager should be receiving 8 to 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night. The problem for most of us is when kids hit their teens, their biological clock shifts 1 hour. So the kid that used to go to sleep at 9 o'clock now doesn't want to go to sleep till 10 o'clock. They used to get up at 7 and they're barely dragging their booty out of the bed by 8, okay? That's a normal pattern. The other thing to remember is this, that we have to pay attention to depression. We have a lot of kids in this country that are depressed. One of the questions you want to ask your children very often is there hope? Do you have hope that, whatever's frustrating? I have a son that has a learning disability. He doesn't read very well. He's gifted in math and science. My question always to him was, do you hope that someday you'll be able to read as easily as other people read? We want to keep hope alive. It helps with depression. So if I have a kid that's not sleeping, is depressed, or all of a sudden has a huge change in friends, I need to pay attention. Now, we know that naturally some kids, their relationships are going to change when they shift from one school to another. That's part of the process. But if all of a sudden somebody's had a best friend and all of a sudden the best friend isn't calling anymore, we might want to start asking some questions. Okay? Another thing that you want to watch out for, and this is a hard one. I don't know many teenagers that aren't moody. Anybody have one of those laying around somewhere? It kind of goes with the territory. And here's why. Our brain and our body cannot grow at the same time. So if your child is going through a growth spurt, don't expect much to be going on up here. It ain't gonna happen. Okay? This only becomes engaged when the body isn't growing. So we need to start looking for those signs. The other thing is, I want you to see this one. More time online or refuse. Do you see what we're saying? What happens when kids are getting cyberbullied, they either don't but be on it all the time. It's one extreme or the other. If that's happening, then you need to start asking some questions. I want you to take just 1 minute. What's one up there that you think you've seen in some child that you know? Just take a minute. Talk about that for 1 second. So one of those indicators that you think you've seen in some way. Okay, we are at time, and I just want to do 2 things. We did bring some copies of our book, Creating Your B-Print, which is about how to form agreements with yourself and your family. The other thing that we did bring is the assets. I know as a parent, I want to know what can I do to help my kid. I mean, I think that's the bottom line for most of us. This comes out of the Search Institute, which was sponsored by Lutheran Brotherhood. They did a massive study across the country. And what it talks about is that kids have 2 types of assets in one ability. What's called an asset rather than a deficit mind. And assets come in 2 forms. What can we do as a community? Right? What are the assets we can build in our community? The other is what assets can I help my children build internally? I gave you the handout. They have a wonderful, wonderful website. Those of you that we didn't give you the age group that you have, they have all of the other age groups. If you have younger children, we did bring those. They're on their website.
We want to get this. On the way out, we would love if you'd like to become part of our newsletter and information that we share. We'd love to give us your technology, your email address. We told you to be careful. We'll respect it, and we would love just to be able to send you out information. We do workshops in the area, and we have a book coming out for, actually it's really for schools, called Setting the Tone. It's about creating the conditions in a school community where we know if there's less coercion going on in schools and at home, these incidents of bullying go down. That doesn't mean they're not firm. Walls are firm. It's the guilt, the punishment, that type of thing, how we can start to take that out of the classroom and bring in these agreements, and we can help people be accountable.
We'll leave these on the back. You can just stick your email on here. I do want you to do one thing. Are you going to do something? Before she comes up to close, what I'd like you to do is just, I always think you got to pick the best and junk the rest. Does that make some sense? I want you to help solidify that. Just real quick, either write down or tell somebody by you what's one thing you want to hang on to and remember. Just one. Just take a second to think that. Either want to hang on to just one thing.
Would you join me in giving our speakers a big round of applause? And Shelley tells me this is not a reward. This is actually a gift, so I can actually do a door prize. So people pull out your raffle ticket. And I'm going to, you can see I have there. We have for you tonight a gift card from Walmart. Always comes in handy, and the winner is 790883. Is that you? All right, come on down and pick up your gift card. As she's coming, we can give her a hand for that. We always give winners a hand. It's fun to win. Thanks for being here. I just want to again say thank you for coming. It's a really important topic, and I think the speakers tonight have given us a lot to think about. I know from the school perspective, there's a lot I heard that would be good for classroom models and school models, and I certainly hope that we'll continue to do some of those things and get better at those things. Next week, or excuse me, I keep saying that, 2 weeks from now, September the 29th, we're going to have Rachel's Challenge back here, so come back for the next series. That is not part of the wrap sessions, but it is something that we're doing to spotlight this topic, and you'll get even more information on the topic of bullying and internet safety and all those things that are important to you. I hope you did get your questions answered tonight, and I sure hope you'll come back. Thanks for being here, and please be safe as you travel home. If you have any personal questions you want to ask our speakers, they will stay, and we hope and invite you to do so. Thanks again. Have a good evening.